Hey everyone, welcome to Academy Consulting Podcast. My name is Arica.
And I'm Mike.
And we are really excited to be here with you today because we are talking about something that I believe every single person who has ever walked the face of this earth at some point or the other, well maybe not Jesus, but at some point or the other has experienced, and that is guilt.
Guilt, and it's what we've studied this month in Life Academy. If you're in Life Academy, hopefully you've enjoyed those lessons. If you missed them, go back and catch up. The order doesn't really matter so much. You've kind of caught us here in the middle of a game of canasta. It's something we play a lot, actually. With friends and family members, we all kind of play canasta. So here we are in this game, and it's mocked up a little bit for you, but this is a good example of a normal game for us. I got a few sixes out.
Where I'm usually winning. That's usually how it goes.
And she's got aces and a wild card and just a bunch of good junk. And my question to you is, do you cheat sometimes? I mean, how is it that you are so lucky all the time? Is there cheating involved?
I actually don't ever cheat.
Ever?
No.
You've never cheated? A game of canasta with us, you've never cheated?
No, in fact, there are times once in a while that I count my points and I'm not sure if it's 10 or 20 or whatever, and I'll go back and recount, or if I've already thrown my cards in, I'll give myself less than what I would think, just so I don't cheat.
So no guilt?
No.
You're just winning, you feel good about winning, you don't feel guilty at all?
Mm-hmm.
How about ever? Is there anything from your past where you did something, you made a mistake, and you feel guilty about it?
Oh, yeah. I have a lot of stuff, actually.
Really?
That I feel that I have had guilt about in my past, yes.
Okay, for example?
Well, the very first thing I can ever remember is I stole a piece of bubble gum once. There was this corner store in Brandon. The owner's name was Russell. I don't even remember what it exactly was called. But I stole a piece of gum, and I know it was probably 5 cents or something. And this Russell guy was like a grandpa to all us kids that came into the store all the time.
And how old are you at this time? 21, 22?
I don't know. Old enough to ride my bike down to the corner of Brandon. So probably 7 or 8.
Okay.
I mean,
Right.
And it wasn't until I was older and a teenager that I was working at a restaurant and he would come in every day for coffee that I finally admitted to him, and I paid him back for that piece of gum, because I carried guilt every time I would see him for probably 10 years. I would think about that piece of gum.
All right. I have a similar story from my childhood in reverse almost. Growing up, our family game was some cards, some rummy and stuff, but also Yahtzee. And we would play with my grandma played Yahtzee every day. So we'd play Yahtzee with her, and a lot of times we'd be at a table like this, and it'd be my mom at that end, I was there, and my grandma was here. It was kind of always the same. And everyone knew she would cheat. She always cheated at Yahtzee. So she'd shake her dice out, and there'd be some 4s and some other stuff, and she would look at one of the die and be like, "Oh, what is this? Oh, it's a 4. Oh, I've got 4 4s." And I'm 8 years old or whatever when I figured this out, that she's a big cheater. And the first time she did it, I was about to pipe up, "Hey, Grandma!" And my dad was walking by, and he just looked at me and gave me the death stare that dads have, and just shook his head, you do not bring it up. Everyone knows she cheats. She's gonna cheat, and she's your grandmother, so just let it be. Was what he said, just with his look. And then later, actually, we talked it out, and he's like, "You just keep your mouth shut. Just play Yahtzee. It doesn't matter who wins." She had no guilt. She just cheated. Every game she would cheat at Yahtzee, and she won all the time. She had 3 Yahtzees every game.
Well, no wonder.
But she had no guilt. So from a young age, the guilt thing was something for me. Should I feel bad about things? Should I not feel bad about things? And I think I struggled. I think I did some dumb junk as a kid, like your stealing the gum story, that I probably should have felt some guilt about. Stealing is just wrong, right? You should feel guilty. So I think in my youth, I was screwed up at a young age because of that. Didn't know what should be guilty and what shouldn't be guilty.
Well, that's the thing. So, we're doing a lot of counseling now, and almost with every person, this will come up at some point. And what's really important to know about guilt is there's 2 kinds. I always have this thing where I always say guilt is not from God. I don't believe guilt is from God. But I do believe that our intuition and our moral compass is from God. And sometimes that can look like guilt. So here's what just bear with me.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there's two kinds of guilt, right? There's guilt that's justified and there's guilt that is unjustified. The unjustified guilt is I punch you in the arm. Should I try that? I punch you in the heart and I hurt you. I hurt you.
That's great, yep.
I know I hurt you.
A little.
I should morally and in my heart feel bad for hurting someone.
So that's justified guilt.
That would be justified guilt.
Okay.
That's the feeling that I do believe is from God to help us recognize what is right and what is wrong.
Right.
And I
So
believe
your conscience.
your conscience, yeah. And when you're hurting other people, there's a healthy side to guilt because that guilt leads you hopefully into the direction of making that right.
Okay.
Asking for forgiveness or even forgiving someone else or whatever that looks like. Okay? So that's a healthy kind of guilt and one that you should and can do something about very easily.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys can hear this right now, but we're at our office here in Singer, and there is a giant motorcycle rally that just went by. So if you heard a rumble, that would they're still coming. There's more, I guess. I thought 100 was enough.
Okay, let's just pause this for a minute till they pass, and then we'll restart. Because this could be like a long time. Okay, motorcycle gang has passed.
Well, I can't tell you how many motorcycles. There were so many. I don't know, it's like every motorcycle in Wisconsin or something. I don't know. Sorry.
Good day for a ride.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's that kind of a guilt, the kind that is like your moral compass. What word did you use for it?
Your conscience.
Your conscience. But then there's another kind of guilt, and it's considered unjustified, which an example of that is like you're always a person who has a hard time saying no because you feel guilty about it. And that isn't from your conscience. That's just your life teaching you, however it has taught you to be a people pleaser. And so you become too busy and you can't handle it, but you have guilt because you feel like you're letting people down. And that's something that has to be worked through a little bit differently than the other kind of guilt.
Yeah, and even spiritually speaking, God's not a God of guilt. If there's been mistakes you've made or making right now or made in the past, whatever, and talk to him about it and say, listen, I know it was a mistake, right? I'm sorry. It's over with God. And he doesn't carry that guilt with you and is always on top of you saying, well, remember when you did the thing. He's just not that way. And sadly, I think the devil's that way with us. We always think we're not good enough. We're not good enough for God, so we can't be close to God. We're not good enough for God, so we don't deserve a great relationship with him or with other people or whatever it is. That's super heinous in your life. Like it could totally ruin your life. And a lot of people struggle with it. You may be struggling with it right now. Where there's these things you've done, you feel God's against you or disappointed, maybe. God's disappointed in you. And you're not living the life you could. And it's unhealthy. It's bad for you. So I think there's a better way to go.
Yeah. When I say guilt isn't from God, that's exactly it. For most of us, our guilt is from ourselves.
Yeah.
That we know, right? We believe that God forgives us and is washed white as snow. So it's not from him, but we can't forgive ourselves for it.
Right, we bury it.
The problem.
That's one of the lessons that we taught. We bury it. We just stick it way down deep, and it's always kind of there. And something happens in your day or whatever, you see something on TV, whatever, maybe someone says something to you, and it just kind of comes back up. And you start feeling kind of crummy about it, or you make the mistake again and you feel crummy about it, and you just keep squishing it down. Eventually, it just leads to such bad stuff for you inside, where you can't really be yourself, you can't look in the mirror and feel good about yourself. It's no way to live.
Yeah.
So burying it's not the answer.
Right, and so many people are walking around with that.
Yeah. The other thing I often say that people do is they just blame someone else, right? So maybe you can relate to this one. Maybe you don't bury it, but maybe it's like stuff's always someone else's fault. I think God understands that if you struggle with it, but you got to cut it out. All the way back, I said this in one of the lessons, all the way back, Adam blamed Eve, right? Like there was one thing, God gave them everything, there was one thing they weren't supposed to do. They went ahead and did it anyways. God confronts Adam, and he blames it on Eve, right? He blames it on Eve, like she did it. The woman you gave me did it. So the woman was Eve's fault, and then you gave me. He says the woman you gave me to God, like it's God's fault. Like God put this woman in his life who led him astray. So from the beginning of time, the very first people, like they blamed others for their mistakes. You just gotta own up to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So how have you personally overcome guilt in your life? Is that something that you have struggled with?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, this is a good one for me. Like I said, you have to own up to it. You got to admit it. You can't hide it. You can't squish it down. You can't blame someone else. So for me, a guilty thing in my life for many years is I've been a pastor. I was a pastor for 20 years. And sometimes, I look at myself in the mirror and want to be the man I thought other people wanted me to be. Like you see all these things about like, well, a good person should do this, or a spiritual person should do that, or a Christian person should do this. And I didn't always do those things. And I'd feel crummy about it. People would talk about how they have this great devotional time every day where they study their Bible and you do all this stuff. And I'd feel like, well, man, I'm not doing that right now. How do I get on stage and inspire people to be closer to God if I'm not as close to God as I need to be? And yet you can't really get up on stage and admit that every single week. But it is a struggle. It was a struggle, and it still is, to be the man I want to be, but then also people watch a video and see you're talking about spiritual things and know you're also flawed. Right? Yeah, I'm flawed. I'm as flawed as anybody. I'm trying, just like you're probably trying to live the life you'd like to live and that God wants you to live. But it doesn't mean because you're a pastor, you're perfect. And so there's some guilt about that. I've never claimed to be perfect, but I want to be as good as I can for other people, so I'm not disappointing them.
Yeah, it's just your own expectations that you have for yourself, or that you believe God may have for you, or other people may have for you. Yeah. You're never going to live up to those.
Right, exactly. And I think God looks at me and says, I'm his son. I'm not his employee. I'm not his pastor that's working somewhere. I'm just his son. And I always have to look at myself the way God looks at me.
Yeah. That's
the most important thing. And if you look at yourself the way God looks at you, you'll see yourself a lot better, even if you've made mistakes and you're dealing with them yet.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that, because it's very similar for me, and I bet it's similar for a lot of you too, in that wherever you feel like you've fallen short in your life, it's probably because you, in your mind, feel like you can't measure up. For me, it's, I did get a divorce. And now
So hold on. So before you get into that, it's a very personal thing, but having a divorce, having a major life issue, that's real. People have major life issues. All people do, and it's also real to have feelings later about it. It's been a couple of years for you, but you still deal with it. So just talk to us a little bit about the reality of that, and be as raw as you can be.
Well, there's so many pieces to it. The first being admitting my fault in it and not blaming someone else for the choice that I chose to make is a big deal. Still is one that I still have to face and deal with as well. The other is similar to, well, here I am. On the outside, we look like a really picture perfect family. I'm a woman, I'm a pastor, and now, oh my goodness, I'm going to be divorced. And the judgment and the criticism that I took from people, the guilt that I carried from that, sometimes still is something I need to work through. And that's where knowing, what kind of guilt it was, is a guilt that I need to reconcile something with, that helped me a lot in this journey. And guilt about being a mom. And now that I'm a mom, less hours, so to speak, because I have to share custody of the kids, there's a lot of guilt in that. And it's been a really therapeutic and healing process for me to really, first of all, go to God and say, okay, what is true? And what do you say is true about me? And listening to his voice instead of everyone else's. That 100% was the key, and still is the key for me.
Can I ask you a question I've never asked you before, and are you going to answer it live on camera?
Well, you say it that way. Should I be nervous?
Yeah, a little.
But yeah, of course. Go ahead.
When you look in a mirror, who do you see? A mom, a pastor, a counselor? Who do you see?
You know what? Honestly, on a really good day, I see someone who is loved, and I see someone who has a purpose. And I believe in that purpose, and God has shown me that. On my worst days, I say I'm a terrible mother, and I don't deserve to be helping people in the way that I do.
Yeah.
But God tells me differently, but that is my human side coming out, honestly.
Well, thank you for your honesty, because I think many adults, especially parents, would have so many of the same feelings. Like there's so many times that I would look at myself, and I tried really hard to be a good dad, but I was just looking in the mirror and disappointed with myself. Well, a good dad would do this or that. And I especially I think for women. Because a woman is supposed to be this amazing businesswoman and this amazing mom and this beautiful wife and all this stuff that the media puts out there, and then you can't do it. It's impossible to do it. And then you end up feeling like garbage about yourself. When if everyone was just real with each other, you realize no one else was doing it either, right? We're all not doing it. That's the crowd. That's the in crowd. All of us screw-ups are the in crowd. There's no crowd of people that got everything perfect.
Well, and I think a really big key about me personally, but anyone who's dealing with guilt, is living in your present and not living in your past. Mm-hmm. I think that is 100% the key, not only for an issue of guilt, but for so many things that people struggle with, is just recognizing where you are right now, how far you've come, and forgiving yourself for the stuff that whatever burden is that you're carrying. It's easy to say, well, give it to God and he'll take it. But we know that it isn't as easy as that. It takes a lot of intentional work and healing and diving deep into ourselves in order to really be free from it.
Okay, so we're going to wrap this up really quick here, and I want to finish by doing this. I'm going to ask you one way that you can share with others that your relationship with God, something you do with God, has helped you deal with things you've done wrong in your past or that you feel guilty about. Like what do you do? You go to God and do what? Give them a suggestion.
Well, for me, I am a really big sitting in silence with God. I'm more of a listener to God than I am a talker to God. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. But I have learned to understand, and I really do believe what he says about me to be true. And there are days when the humans' opinions of me are a little louder, and it's in those times that I know that I need that space, that quiet, for God to, fill me again with his truth, which I believe is the only voice to listen to live a guilt-free life, a life of freedom, the way that the Bible talks about. And I think it's as simple as recognizing it, admitting it, and then asking God to help you with it, and even someone else, a counselor, a therapist, something like that, because
to just help you get through it.
Yeah.
Process it. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'll share one with you as well, and we'll wrap it up with this. Someone suggested this, and I think it's a brilliant thing. And on my good days, I do this. I wish I did it every day. I don't know why I don't do it every day. I'm a screw up, okay? But on my good days, I spend some time in the morning, like 10 minutes, and I just sit. I have a certain chair I like to sit in with a cup of coffee, but I sit in the chair and just feel myself. Like I feel my feet on the floor, and my butt in the chair, and the temperature of the room or whatever. Just get to that spot where I can feel the presence of myself in that moment. And then I just mention to God a couple things that I'm grateful for, or thankful for, either way. And then the end of it is this: I spend a bit of time thinking through anything I wish I would have done differently the day before. Like it's first thing in the morning. It's easy. Not my whole life, not every stupid mistake I've ever made, but just yesterday. God, here's what I wish I would have done different yesterday. Maybe I was short with someone or rude or whatever it may have been. And I just own up to it. I just own up to it and just say to God, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. And if another person's involved, hopefully I'm like big enough to go and apologize to them as well. But I just, for a moment, talk about what I wish I'd done differently yesterday, which helps me not continue to make the same stupid mistakes. And then I say to God what I want to do today. So like, hey God, it's really important for me today just to be super productive at work. I got a lot of stuff I need to do. It's really stressing me out. Please help me be productive. This is what I want today to be about. I want to be good to people. And that's it. And it's a very simple thing that anyone can do. But instead of living with guilt every day, you clean it up to start your day. You start every day fresh with a goal. And it's super helpful for me.
Yeah, and I think the thing to remember too, when you said, everyone else gets up in the morning and does their devotions. I think God is a relationship. God is not a religion. God is not something to check off on your to-do list. It's spending time with and getting to know in a way that you would with anyone else you have a relationship in your life. And it's that simple. And we make it out to be so much harder. And reading God's word and being in Bible studies and going to church and all those things can help you in that relationship. But it really does start with just simple conversations.
Yeah.
So that's it. Simple conversations, bring God in every day. And without a doubt, your life will change.
Yeah. And I'll just wrap it up by saying yes. And by doing that, you go to him with whatever you're guilty about. You confess it and you let it go just like he does. With that, I will say I hope that you have a really good week.